welcome to another Kerfuffle webinar. We are delighted on a Friday. I'm as shocked as you on here, people. Friday morning is not one of my best times, but I would not have missed today for anything. So we have here today the Depositary and some of their finest partners, and indeed their clients. And as some of you smarter people will notice, one of them appears to have got so much efficiency savings from the Depositary that he's clearly been able to go to Maldives to do this breach. So we'll come to Ryan later, sickeningly trying to do his routine on the beach, Top Gun style. Let's kick off, though, in terms of, first of all, obviously, Kristian, your good self. Stop, collaborate, and listen. The Vikings back with a brand new invention. Will you stop trying to go head-to-head with me and being the most ridiculous prop tech company on the planet?
I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about, Whaley.
The difference is there's actually some depth backing your business up. But anyway, how are you, sir? Anyway, you well?
Good, mate. Yeah, good. Busy, excited. Yeah, we're having some exciting times at the Depositary at the moment. So yeah, no, all good.
Okay, don't tease us. We're going to come on to that. Don't rush it. It's best to lie back and let the magic happen here, I find. Because his Wi-Fi is not going to hold up. I'm going to go to Ryan next. Ryan Woolfenden, leader Fox's finest. How are you, my friend? Actually, I don't know why I asked that. You're obviously sickeningly well. Brilliant. Thank you for your comments. We'll have more of that. He doesn't even know he's on mute. This is perfect. Chris Watkins, if you're watching, don't start getting smart-arsed about it. This is the guest messing this up, not me. Right, anyway, so we've got a wolf, a whale, and a Viking. It sounds like a seedy joke. I'm going to go straight to Kelly Wallace to bring some much-needed seriousness back to the occasion. Kelly.
No.
No.
No pressure for me. Hello, thank you for having me. My first time on one of these, so thank you for inviting me along.
Okay. I took that as a bit of a threat that you might not come back, depending on how today went. Yeah, just stick with it. We get to the good stuff eventually. Reagan, come on, cheer up. Come on.
You're miserable. Do you know what? Sometimes I forget that you can all see me.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you doing?
Everyone's watching. Well,
I know. Because I did a podcast yesterday and I was overly animated in that and then realised no one could see me. I'm going to go the other way today.
Right, so just to put it that, I did the professional thing with Ryan at Leader Fox, Kelly from the TDS, obviously, or the sales manager there, Reagan from the fantastic Paramount Properties. That sets us all up perfectly and everything else. Now, I think we're going to talk, obviously, you're going to give us a bit of a background again, Kristian, just to set, for people that haven't heard of the Depositary, just to give us a really brief intro there. But I did ask you, I like to set right at the start of the webinars like this, why people should stay to listen, apart from obviously learn fashion tips from PropTech's finest here. But I asked you, Kristian, for a couple of standout stats, didn't I, in terms of on what you're able to, why people should pay attention. And you came back with a couple of them. And I like there was one that said over 70% of proposed deposit deductions are approved first time by tenants on the Depositary.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to ask you for some context because I've learned from professional interviewers that that's really important here. And then secondly, you cut the end of tenancy admin down by at least 80%. Now that one, that even a simpleton like myself can understand. That's absolutely fantastic. And it's important to point out that although you're a relatively new business, you have been adopted by some of the very best agents, as we can see here today. So this is you're basing these facts, aren't you, on a really good sample of data now?
Yeah, so I mean we've probably processed about 4,000 tenancies now in the last sort of 16 months or so. And yeah, as you highlighted, I mean, we built the platform really to make agents' lives easier. I mean, that is the main goal, is letting agents ourselves, the end of tenancy process. Most of the research we've done is that on average, it's 3 to 4 hours work per tenancy, taking it all the way from booking a checkout through to deposit reconciliation or a dispute. And actually, if there's a dispute, that can easily add a couple of hours onto that as well. So it was just about removing a lot of the legwork for it. So yeah, our primary goal for agents is just to remove a lot of that work. Is very systemized, repetitive. A lot of tenancies actually progress relatively easily, even in a manual process. So what we wanted to do was just get the easy stuff off agents' laps so that they can deal with the more difficult deductions and the more difficult tenants and landlords, and that's really what our platform aims to do. So yeah, I mean, for agents wise, we reduce about 80. We're aiming at 90 within the next sort of 12 to 18 months. We want to get over 90%. But yeah, it's about massively reducing the workload on agents' plates so that they can focus their energies where it's really, really needed. And because we take a very sort of almost purely evidence-based approach with deductions in our platform, for agents that do things the way they should, that have the professional check-in, check-out reports, that get proper quotes in for deductions, that evidence their position on stuff. As you highlighted, about 75% of deductions are agreed within our platform with no renegotiation from the tenant whatsoever, because it's very hard as a tenant to argue with, here's your tenancy agreement, here's the check-in report, here's the check-out report, and here's the invoice to put right what you put wrong. It's a very, very difficult argument.
But Kristian, just give me some context around that. What would that have looked like outside of the depository? What would be an expected kind of?
So I think for most agents, what that looked like was, you'd be called. Every agent has slightly different processes. So some agents sort of put it on the tenants and would just send them their clerk details and have them book it. Some agents did it in-house. I think Paramount used to arrange a lot of their checkouts, maybe still do, very much themselves to run that book of things. But then from the point the check-in report comes in, for most agents, that's a very manual process. So they have to deal with the meter readings to make sure the bills are closed off properly. They need to read through a checkout report, which can be anything from 10 to 60 pages, depending on the size of property and the level of furnishing. So for agents managing it, they've got to read through this massive document, type up all the findings in there to their landlord to say, right, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, here's the 15 issues we found in the report, and this is what we kind of suggest you might want to propose for each one. And it would be a very heavy email-based conversation back and forward. And then same thing, transitioning that over to the tenant. It would be sort of copying that over to a tenant, but reformatting it into a more tenant-appropriate language. And then for tenants as well, they would quite often get this really rather lengthy email that would have lots of bits and pieces in it. Quite often, agents wouldn't attach documents to that because a lot of these documents are big attachments, so you can't attach them to an email and send them out. So tenants would be expected to dig around for a check-in report that they maybe received 2.5 years ago, and a tenancy agreement they've probably never looked at since they signed at the start of their tenancy. So it's just about making things readily accessible, and also emotion tends to creep into that. It's not uncommon in that email chain for there to be discussions about, if we hadn't had to chase you for rent for those 3 months, then we probably wouldn't be chasing you for this cracked mirror. But as you caused us hassle here, we're going to cause you hassle there. And, there'd be sort of little, or equally tenants would flip it on their head and go, I'd readily pay for that mirror that I broke, but because the boiler broke down for 3 days, I'm not willing to pay for it. And so it's about, another part of it for us is about removing the emotion, highlighting what a heavily regulated process we have. Since 2007, when the deposit legislation came in, it became a heavily regulated, legitimate space. But I think for many tenants, there is still this feeling that it is still a little bit the Wild West out there. That, yes, there's kind of this legislation that tenants kind of get, that there's something there, but they're still at the mercy of, really the attitude that the landlord or agent takes to it. And often, as an agent, you're in this no-win position where the tenant thinks you're colluding with the landlord to rip them off, and the landlord thinks you're siding with the tenant just to make your life easy. And so you're stuck in the middle as this person who can't. Not always, there are landlords who appreciate what agents do, and tenants who totally accept legitimate deductions. But there are those many.
Kristian, there are also healthy people in Blackpool, but that doesn't make it. That's a minority as well, aren't they? Kristian, I think that's a really good overview. And one of the things I love about the whole Depositary story is that you and Anne, in terms of how this happened, was you used to review, didn't you, within base, the bits of the business that were causing strife, that were causing hassle, that were taking time. And from that evolved this need, actually, we need to create a solution, because clearly the CRM companies were just not really paying any attention in terms of focusing on a true solution in this area. And that's the wonderful element here, is PropTech often gets accused of being a solution for no problem, doesn't it? But yours was a very real issue, and that's why I've always said to you is you've never really had the concept of a minimum viable product.
No,
because you've known what it is. You've gone out at such an early stage, and people like Reagan at Paramount and everyone else. I think Ryan's just gone to get his mojito, but he's back. He's back here in some format. But what you were just listening to there, Reagan, about Kristian had to say, would you echo very much that kind of, just in terms of the transparency, I suppose, the efficiency side, the way it helps take the emotion out of it? Would you agree with Kristian that that's been your experience?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think if anything, Kristian is overlooking a huge part of it for us, which we weren't aware of. We signed up purely based on everything Kristian has just said, time saving, all of those sorts of elements, quite a selfish gain, I suppose, in terms of freeing ourselves up, giving us more time. And actually what we underestimated is what we've gained from the service, and what it's actually added to our offering. So I think, talking about the emotion piece, because you were just talking about it, we are gaining relationships at the end of tenancies which we would have previously lost. So we all know it can go sour. You have a fantastic 5-year relationship with a resident, you move out, and it's horrible, it's awful. They're not going to come back to us, and it's not our fault. There's nothing we could have done about it. And actually the Depositary is it's a vehicle to allow that frustration, I guess, almost goes through there. I don't even know if sometimes they recognise that we're on the other end putting in the deductions. Maybe that isn't fully understood, but it definitely takes out an element of us against them.
Yes.
So actually what we're having at the end of it are, smoother transitions and relationships which are leaving us as a company, we're being held in, higher esteem than I think probably we would have with some of the more difficult ones before.
Reagan, do you think? I mean, we do all operate in I'm in many different bubbles, but in agency, we get caught up in terms of that. One of the biggest misunderestimates, as I can see it, is thinking that the great British public understand what's going on. In both, not just obviously we're talking about the letting side, but even on the sales side of things here. So you mentioned there, they always see the agents as the crux of the issues, don't they, and everything else there. Things like the Depositary can only help educate the audience slowly over time, can't they, about that, what's involved? Yeah,
exactly. I mean, as Kristian said, the deductions are so clear, and it's black and white. There's no maintenance issues, there's no rent arrears history, there's no poor communication standards, anything else that is usually brought in. That white noise is cleared, and it's just very in, out, deduction, page number, picture. You can't argue with it unless you don't agree that it is a damage in the first place, but you lose the ability to offset other negotiating factors against it, and it sort of hones in really on the issue. So you're cutting out the time, you're not having those difficult conversations. And I think they understand it a lot better because it's almost clinical in the way that it's done. And then, come the end of it, obviously, because now we can release the funds so quickly. And I think another huge part of it, if you rewind it slightly, obviously the part at the end is fantastic, and the negotiation and how the deductions are presented. But actually, right at the very beginning of the process, when we receive the notice in, the system allows us to set up those touch points and that correspondence which gets sent periodically between notice in and a resident leaving. So again, what we've gained from that is we look way more professional than we did because we're sending it out. We might send, you might, as a typical agent, I guess, you send the 1 or the 2 pager when you get the notice in. They don't read it. They're not leaving for 2 months. They're not bothered. To then intersperse that throughout that last 2 months, that's a lot of work. Most people aren't going to do that. We certainly didn't. But they get reminded, and they get reminded of their responsibilities. So nothing is a shock at the end. It's like we told you this was going to happen. We gave you plenty of notice. We offered help on how to do it. We offered to book cleaners, all those things. It just makes it seamless for them. And you're totally right. It educates them from the minute they hand in their notice. They know what's expected of them, how's it going to go, and how's it going to look.
Perfect. Reagan, I think you just mentioned they're seamless, and I think that gives us the perfect segue as well to talk about the next element here, Kristian, in terms of, you obviously chose the TDS to obviously partner with. Just talk us through your thought process there, and then we'll come on to Kelly and get her views from the other side. Just talk us through that.
So look, I think as an agent, we all have those same frustrations. There are some great products and services out there, be they prop tech or a more human service, but how those products and services interact is really important. I think Reagan will agree with me here. As agents, I've seen plenty of great concepts, but because they're not plugged into anything else, it's like, well, really, okay, it looks nice, but for us internally, operationally, whilst it saves some bits and pieces in the middle of the process, what we have to manually as agents facilitate around that to communicate the information in and out of CRMs and to other partner providers, that's where the real frustration is. So, we knew with this product, launching it for starters, for starters, hold on, I'm going to reinvent lettings. For starters, we're going to that's totally thrown me off my pitch now. That has totally thrown me. But look, the bottom line is it's about integrations, and so we approached TDS because what we liked with them is, particularly at the time, they very much looked like, of the 3 deposit schemes, the one that understood the value of tech and innovation going forward. So we felt like there was a synergy with that. Their buy-in to our idea, literally from day dot. I mean, I think I emailed Steve, the CEO, who I'd never met in person before, and literally just emailed him directly, like, "Hey, been thinking about building this. What do you think?" And I think 5 days later, I was sat in a meeting with him and Nick, the CFO, and Ben, who at the time was head of TDS Northern Ireland and is now at the NRLA. So, that partnership was great. And what came off the back of that is the integrations that we've built. So we're pretty much fully integrated into the insured and custodial schemes. And, what is great about that is you finish a TDS deposit tenancy on insured or custodial within our platform, and the whole tenancy conclusion process is ended. So if it's insured, you reconcile the deposit funds, and then when in our platform, when you say basically finished, the API with TDS closes off that deposit registration certificate. So again, it's just one less dashboard that an agent has to go to.
Kristian, thank you for your views. I really appreciate everyone's time today, not least Ryan, because obviously he's got the pool to go to now. That volleyball won't hit itself. Kristian, yours is the only product I've ever heard seeing a live product demonstration that made them compare you to God for having created it. So
that was a rather nice bit of feedback. That was a good one.
If you hear Simon Wales saying it's a bit OTT, you've got something special. I thank you all for your time today. I will leave the last word to David Mintz, my consigliere. Finally back together. Everyone, have a fantastic day and a great weekend. Cheers,
guys, thanks for your time today.